The smell of damp limestone and wood smoke hangs heavy over the Seine. Mud-slicked cobblestones ring with the rhythm of iron-shod hooves, while the shadows of Gothic spires stretch across a city of secrets. In this video, I use modern AI tools to breathe life into forgotten paintings and maps, allowing us to walk through scenes that haven't been seen by human eyes for centuries. From medieval mud to imperial gold, we are reclaiming the lost soul of Paris. We begin our journey where the water splits, the Ile de la Cité. If we shift our perspective back to the 12th century, the island is not the polished, open tourist hub we know today. It is a dense, claustrophobic hive of activity, the literal and figurative heart of the French world. Notice the detail in this AI-reconstructed engraving. The houses are tall, timber-framed, and lean toward one another across alleys so narrow that a single cart might block the sun for an entire street. The air here is thick. It carries the scent of the river, yes, but also the metallic tang of blood from the butchers near the Grand Pont and the earthy musk of thousands of inhabitants packed into a handful of acres. Beneath your feet, the ground is a pavement of packed earth and refuse, slippery after the frequent Parisian rains. The Ile was the sacred stone of our title, a fortress of faith and crown. To the west sat the king, to the east the church. In this era, the island was the entire city. The left and right banks were merely suburbs, vulnerable to Viking raids and the whims of the wilderness. As we look at the shoreline, notice the absence of the stone quays. Instead, the river laps directly against the walls of houses. Small wooden docks or ports are teeming with flat-bottomed boats delivering wine, grain, and firewood. The transformation of this space over 8 centuries is perhaps the most radical in urban history. Most of what you see in these reconstructed images, the tangled web of medieval streets like Rue de la Giverie, was ruthlessly leveled in the 1860s. What remains is a skeletal version of its former self, a grand stage where the actors have long since departed, leaving only the monumental backdrops of the cathedral and the palace. Rising from the eastern tip of the island, like a prayer carved from rock, we find Notre-Dame de Paris. To understand its impact, we must strip away the modern paved square, the Parvis. In the 13th century, the cathedral did not sit in an open plaza. It was hemmed in by a chaotic cluster of small chapels, houses for the clergy, and the Hôtel Dieu hospital. Notice the texture of the stone in this reanimation. Today, we see the pale, cleaned limestone, but in the Middle Ages, the facade was a riot of color. The statues of the kings and the saints in the portals were painted in vibrant blues, reds, and golds. They were meant to be read like a giant stone picture book by a population that could not read ink on parchment. As we move closer, listen to the soundscape. The cathedral was a permanent construction site for nearly 200 years. The rhythmic clink-clink of stonecutters' hammers and the creaking of massive wooden treadwheel cranes are the heartbeat of the city. If you look up at the towers, they lack the spire, the flesh, that we became so accustomed to before the fire of 2019. That spire was a later addition. The medieval silhouette was blunter, more fortress-like. Inside, the atmosphere shifts instantly. The air is cooler, smelling of beeswax and incense. The light filtering through the rose windows isn't just light, it's lux nova, the new light of Gothic philosophy, intended to transport the soul from the material to the divine. The floor is not the polished marble of today, but a patchwork of gravestones, worn smooth by the shuffling feet of pilgrims who have traveled hundreds of miles to touch the relics housed within. It was the city's spiritual anchor, a place where the social hierarchy of Paris, from the beggar at the door to the bishop at the altar, was momentarily frozen in stone. Moving westward across the island, the skyline is dominated by the Palais de la Cité. Long before the Louvre became the seat of power, this was the residence of the Capetian kings. Today, we know it as the Conciergerie and the Palais de Justice, but in the 14th century, it was a sprawling complex of spiked towers and grand halls. Observe the transition of the architecture. The palace was a symbol of the king's dual role, a warrior and a judge. The Great Hall, or Grande Salle, was one of the largest in Europe, a forest of blackened oak pillars where the king held court. But the true jewel, the lost treasure hidden within this existing heritage, is the Sainte-Chapelle. If we step inside the upper chapel during a late afternoon in 1248, the effect is hallucinogenic. The walls seem to disappear entirely, replaced by 6,000 square feet of stained glass. The AI rendering captures the jewel box effect, the deep crimsoned and cobalt light washing over the crown of thorns, which King Louis IX had purchased for a sum greater than the cost of the building itself. As the centuries progressed, the palace shifted from a home to a machine of bureaucracy and terror. The royal family moved out, seeking the safety of the Louvre or the Loire Valley, leaving the Palais de la Cité to become the center of the French legal system. The towers that once housed kings became prisons. During the Revolution, the bells that once called the faithful to prayer at Sainte-Chapelle would be drowned out by the rumbling of the tumbrils, the carts carrying prisoners from these very cells to the guillotine. The sacred stone had become a site of judicial sacrifice. We cross the bridge to the right bank and enter a sensory overload, Les Halles. For 800 years, this was the belly of Paris, the central market that fed a hungry, growing metropolis. If you visit this site today, you find a modern shopping complex and a park. But through our reconstruction, we can see the sprawling, muddy, magnificent chaos of the Philippe Auguste era. The smell hits you first, an overwhelming cocktail of raw blood from the butcher's stalls, the briny scent of Atlantic herring packed in salt, the sweetness of overripe fruit, and the pungent aroma of the nearby cemetery of the Innocents. Notice the detail in the stalls. Each trade has its territory. The drapers, the spice merchants, the leather workers, all huddled under wooden lean-tos and stone galleries. By the 19th century, this medieval sprawl was replaced by Victor Baltard's legendary iron and glass pavilions. Our AI walkthrough shows these umbrellas of iron catching the early morning light as thousands of farmers from the countryside arrive in the pre-dawn darkness. The sound is a deafening roar of haggling in a dozen different French dialects, the clattering of wooden crates, and the shouting of the Fort des Halles, the legendary strongmen who carried hundreds of pounds of produce on their backs. Les Halles was more than a market. It was a city within a city, with its own slang, its own rules, and its own hierarchy. It was the most Parisian place in Paris, dirty, vibrant, and utterly essential. Its demolition in the 1970s is often cited as one of the greatest architectural heartbreaks in the city's history. To see it here, in its full, bustling glory, is to realize that the heart of Paris didn't just beat in its palaces, but in its stomachs. We move east along the right bank to a site that exists today only as a ghost in the pavement, the Bastille. If we shift our perspective to the late 18th century, a massive, brooding silhouette dominates the skyline. 8 circular towers, each 73 feet high, cast a permanent shadow over the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. Notice the texture of the walls in this reconstruction. Blackened by soot and centuries of Parisian humidity, the stones appear almost seamless, a monolithic symbol of lettres de cachet and the king's absolute power to imprison without trial. The air here feels different. It is quieter, filtered through the tension of a city on the brink. The fortress is surrounded by a wide, stagnant moat, the water a dull olive green, reflecting the narrow slits of windows that served as the only eyes of the prisoners within. In our AI-enhanced view, we can witness the morning of July 14, 1789. The sensory detail is visceral. The smell of gunpowder smoke stinging the eyes, the frantic ringing of the tocsin bells from nearby churches, and the roar of a crowd that has reached its breaking point. This was the moment the sacred stone of royal authority was first chipped away. Within months of its fall, the Bastille was not just captured, it was erased. Entrepreneurs sold its stones as souvenirs, carving them into miniature models of the prison. Today, as you stand in the Place de la Bastille, look for the 3 rows of paving stones that mark the old foundations. It is a landmark defined entirely by its absence. Turning back towards the center, we arrive at the Louvre. To understand the Louvre is to see it as a living organism that never stopped growing. In this reanimation, we peel back the layers of the sprawling museum we see today to reveal its 12th century ancestor, a grim defensive fortress with a massive central keep, the Grosse Tour. If we shift the timeline to the 16th century, notice the transformation. The defensive walls are being pulled down to make way for the Renaissance. The stone changes from rough-hewn medieval blocks to the intricate lace-like carvings of Pierre Lescot. The palace becomes a theater of power. Walk through the Cour Carrée as it appeared under Louis XIV. The lighting is flickering torchlight, reflecting off the gilded carriages of the nobility. The Louvre was a city within itself, housing not just the king, but thousands of courtiers, servants, and even artists who lived in the cluttered mezzanine levels. But the most striking change occurs during the Revolution. Notice how the royal apartments are stripped of their furniture, the silken wallpapers replaced by the stark, egalitarian light of a public gallery. The palace of the few became the museum of the many. The most jarring change over time is the absence of the Tuileries Palace, which used to close the western end of the Louvre's courtyard. In our reconstruction, you can see this lost wing, a masterpiece of French classical architecture that was burned to the ground during the Paris Commune of 1871. Its ghost remains in the perfectly straight line of sight that now stretches all the way to the Arc de Triomphe. We return to the river to cross the Pont Neuf, or the New Bridge. Paradoxically, it is now the oldest standing bridge in Paris. When it was completed in 1607, it was a radical departure from the medieval world. Notice the detail that sets it apart. For the first time in Parisian history, a bridge was built without houses lining its sides. In earlier scenes, bridges like the Pont Neuf were dark, crowded tunnels of overhanging shops. But on the Pont Neuf, the view is wide open. You can finally see the Seine. The AI reanimation brings back the vibrant street life of the 17th century, the comédiennes, the tooth pullers, the book peddlers, and the pickpockets who made this bridge the social heart of the city. The sensory experience here is one of motion. The clattering of wheels on the stone pavement, the first sidewalks in Paris were built here, and the shouting of street criers selling Le Pont Neuf, a type of popular song. The bridge was the first place where the different classes of Paris truly mixed, the musketeer on his horse, the monk on foot, and the noble in his sedan chair. It was the birth of the flaneur, the Parisian observer. Even the stone faces or mascarons that line the cornices of the bridge seem to watch the passing crowds with a grotesque, timeless curiosity.
Finally, we arrive at the mid-19th century, the moment Paris as we know it was truly born. Under Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann, the city underwent a creative destruction that was nothing short of surgical. Our AI tools allow us to witness the exact moment the medieval neighborhoods we explored in Part 1 are sliced open to make way for the grand boulevards. Notice the scale of the demolition. Thousands of ancient, crooked houses are being reduced to rubble, creating a dust that hangs over the city for nearly 2 decades. In their place rise the uniform, cream-colored facades of Lutetia limestone. The aesthetics are military in their precision, straight lines, zinc roofs, and rows of horse chestnut trees. The soundscape shifts from the muffled echoes of narrow alleys to the grand, reverberating roar of a modern metropolis. The air smells of gaslight and freshly laid asphalt. These boulevards were designed for the Grand Travaux, to move troops quickly to prevent revolutions, but also to allow the new middle class to see and be seen. If you look closely at the balconies in our reconstruction, you can see the social hierarchy of the Haussmann building, the grand étage noble on the second floor with the most ornate carvings, and the tiny, cramped chambre de bonne for the servants under the hot zinc roofs. This was the final transition of Paris from a sacred medieval stone to the capital of the 19th century. We have walked through 1,000 years of stone and spirit, from the muddy banks of the Ile de la Cité to the sun-drenched symmetry of Haussmann's avenues. These streets are more than just a map. They are the geological layers of our shared human struggle for beauty, power, and freedom. They shaped our identity, teaching us that a city is never finished. It is a constant conversation between the past and the future. If you could spend just 1 hour in this lost version of Paris, which specific building or hidden alleyway would you visit first? Would you brave the chaos of Les Halles or seek the new light of the medieval Notre-Dame? Your choice reveals a lot about the traveler you are. Let me know in the comments. Bringing these lost worlds back to life takes hundreds of hours of AI processing and historical research. If you value this journey into our collective past, hit subscribe and join our community of time travelers. Together, we will ensure these stories are never forgotten. Where should we go next? Is there a lost corner of Rome, a forgotten street in Edo, Tokyo, or perhaps the vanished skyline of old New York that calls to you? Tell me which city we should reanimate next, and we will begin the journey together.